Hello friends, welcome to Creative Medicine. In this lecture, we will learn about lincosamides. So in the lincosamides, first we have clindamycin. So clindamycin action is it inhibits the enzyme translocase. Clindamycin will inhibit the enzyme translocase. So what is the use of clindamycin? Clindamycin is used in skin and soft tissue infections, especially with staphylococcal and streptococcal. Penicillin G, clindamycin. So especially for staphylococcal and streptococcal skin and soft tissue infections, we can use clindamycin. Then you can use penicillin G also. Penicillin G plus clindamycin. So penicillin G and clindamycin is used in toxic shock syndrome. Toxic shock syndrome, penicillin G and clindamycin together are used in toxic shock syndrome, and clindamycin is also preferred for prophylaxis of endocarditis following dental procedures also. It is preferred for prophylaxis following dental procedures also. Then, if you see the main use against anaerobes is bacteroids and propionibacterium are the main use of clindamycin against anaerobes. Then, if you see the side effects of clindamycin, this has maximum risk of causing pseudomembranous enterocolitis. It has maximum risk of causing pseudomembranous enterocolitis, and it also causes neutropenia. So pseudomembranous enterocolitis is mainly caused by Clostridium difficile. Drug of choice for pseudomembranous enterocolitis is oral vancomycin is the drug of choice, and even metronidazole is the drug of choice for pseudomembranous enterocolitis. Then it is oxazolidinediones. Oxazolidinones. Okay, these oxazolidinones are two types. We have linezolide and we have tedizolide. One we have linezolide and we have tedizolide. Okay, then we have linezolide. This linezolide will bind to 30S, binds to 23S. Sorry, it binds to 23S of 50S subunit and thus inhibits the protein synthesis. So both these will inhibit, the main thing that both these do is both these will inhibit protein synthesis. Both linezolide and tedizolide will inhibit protein synthesis. So if you see the pharmacokinetics, both these can be given either orally or IV route, and they have 100% bioavailability. And if you see, they have no cross resistance to the proteins. They have no cross resistance with other protein synthesis inhibitors. So what are the uses? They can be used in gram positive, VRSA, MRSA, and they can be used in MDR TB, nocardia, hospital acquired pneumonia, or community acquired pneumonia. They can be used. So oxazolidine knowns like linezolide and tedizolide can be used in gram-positive bacteria like VRSA, MRSA. They can be used in MDR TB and nocardia, hospital-acquired pneumonia or community pneumonia. They can be used. So the main side effects of these are, these have a type of side effect called as mitochondrial side effects. So that the mitochondrial toxicity of these include, there can be thrombocytopenia. This thrombocytopenia is mainly seen most commonly seen especially in day 7 to day 10. These thrombocytopenia can be seen, and you can also see neutropenia can be seen in these patients. And these also inhibit monoamine oxidase inhibitors, and thus they cause serotonin-like syndrome. And there can be optic neuritis can occur, peripheral neuropathy can occur, and lactic acidosis can occur in oxazolidinediones. Okay, so side effects like thrombocytopenia, neutropenia, inhibition of monoamine oxidase inhibitors causing serotonin-like syndrome, optic neuritis, peripheral neuropathy, lactic acidosis is seen. Then if you see tedizolide, some important points of tedizolide. Tedizolide is more potent when compared to ridazolide, and it has oral bioavailability is only 85%. Oral bioavailability of it is more than 85%. It has good action, especially against gram-positive. So tedizolide is mainly used for gram-positive organisms, but it has poor action against gram-negative and anaerobics. Remember, this tedizolide has no mitochondrial toxicity. It has no mitochondrial toxicity. The mitochondrial toxicity that is present in this linezolide, these are actually of linezolide. Okay, the mitochondrial toxicity present in linezolide is not present in tedizolide. So there is no optic neuritis and no thrombocytopenia in the linezolid. Then we also have one more thing, which is ketolid. Ketolid includes telithromycin. What does ketolid include? This includes telithromycin. Ketolids include telithromycin, and these ketolids will inhibit CYP3A4, and these are actually excreted in bile and urine. Okay, these are excreted in bile and urine. Ketolid is telithromycin. It includes telithromycin and it inhibits CYP3A4, and it is excreted in bile and urine. Next we have the next important, chloramphenicol. This chloramphenicol will also, it is a nitrobenzene moiety which will attach to 50S ribosome near the A site and thus inhibit the formation of the peptide bond. And thus it inhibits the bacterial protein synthesis. Because it inhibits bacterial protein synthesis, it is a bacteriostatic. But it is bactericidal for only one organism. For Haemophilus influenza, it is actually bactericidal. It will kill the organism. So if you see the pharmacokinetics, chloramphenicol has oral absorption. It crosses the placenta and is secreted in milk. It penetrates the blood-brain barrier and it causes glucuronide conjugation in liver. It is excreted unchanged in urine. So this chloramphenicol will inhibit CYP450 enzymes. And if you see the side effects, chloramphenicol has side effects like it causes bone marrow suppression. So chloramphenicol will cause bone marrow suppression, like it causes non-dose related idiosyncratic effects, like it causes irreversible side effects, like it can result in aplastic anemia. It can cause aplastic anemia, it can cause agranulocytosis, or cytosis can occur, or it can cause thrombocytopenia can occur. Right, so irreversible side effects like aplastic anemia, agranulocytosis, and thrombocytopenia will be seen, and other dose and duration related side effects will be seen. And dose and duration related therapy related myelosuppression is seen, that is inhibition of mitochondrial enzymes are also seen. You will see inhibition of mitochondrial enzymes are also seen in these patients. Okay, then in neonates, this chloramphenicol actually it is degraded by glucuronidase enzyme. So in neonates especially, there is deficiency of glucuronidase enzyme, that is the glucuronidase enzyme glucuronil transferase. The glucuronil transferase enzyme in neonates, that there is deficiency in glucuronil transferase enzyme. So this glucuronil transferase enzyme is less. So as a result, it causes decreased degradation and it also causes toxicity of the drug. So as a result, this will result in children especially, it causes nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, refusal to suck, cyanosis, irritability, and circulatory collapse. And skin becomes grey, and this will form grey baby syndrome. And this will result in grey baby syndrome. And then if you see the other side effects, this chloramphenicol is also associated with oral and vaginal candidiasis. It also causes hypersensitivity reactions like rashes, fever, atrophic glossitis, angioedema. It also causes liver and kidney damage. It is an enzyme inhibitor, so which increases the half-life of warfarin, phenytoin, and protease inhibitors. Then if you see the resistance, we have chloramphenicol resistant chloramphenicol resistant Salmonella typhi have been developed. So these chloramphenicol resistant Salmonella typhi are developed by R plasmid, which is encoded by acetyl transferase. So chloramphenicol resistant chloramphenicol resistant Salmonella typhi has been developed by R plasmid, which is encoding acetyl transferase. So this will also decrease the permeability into the resistant cells. So it will also decrease the affinity of ribosomes. So this is about chloramphenicol. Next, the next important drug we have is pleuromutilins. Okay, these pleuromutilins are actually approved for topical treatment of impetigo. It is approved for topical treatment of topical treatment of impetigo. It is due to methicillin-sensitive staphylococcal aureus. It occurs due to methicillin-sensitive staphylococcal aureus, or it can occur due to Streptococcus pyogenes. It occurs due to methicillin-sensitive staphylococcal aureus or Streptococcus pyogenes. It will bind to 50S ribosomes and thus inhibit protein synthesis. Okay. Then if you see antifungal antibiotics, the next drugs which we have is antifungal antibiotics. So these antifungal antibiotics include, first we have polyene antibiotics. In polyene antibiotics, we have drugs like amphotericin B is present, and we also have nystatin is present. Then in the amphotericin B, first we have amphotericin B. This amphotericin B, in this the polyenes present in it combine with ergosterol and they get inserted onto the membrane. Once they insert onto the membrane, these polyenes will form small pores on the membrane. These pores will allow substances which are present in the cell to move out. So once all the substances in the cell moves out, the cell permeability increases, leading to the death of the cells. So pharmacokinetics is this amphotericin B is not absorbed, is never absorbed orally. So it is only given IV. That too, you should give the patient slow IV infusion is given. Orally, it can be used for intestinal candidiasis. Orally, it can be used for intestinal candidiasis, but you will see no systemic effect. So the main dose of this amphotericin B is 0.6 milligrams per kg per day is the main dose, and half-life is equal to 15 days. Then if you see the use, it is used as drug of choice for serious life-threatening illness. It is used for drug of choice for serious life-threatening fungal infection. For serious life-threatening fungal infection, this amphotericin B is used as a drug of choice, and it is also used as induction agent. And thus it decreases the fungal burden. It decreases the fungal burden, and thus it is replaced with azoles. And this also causes, it is also used in candidiuria. So in bladder irrigation, in candidiuria, we can do bladder irrigation with amphotericin B. Then we have the other side effects. The other side effects include, we have infusion related side effects. So the infusion related side effects, like we have reversible side effects are present, and we also have irreversible side effects are present. Reversible side effects include, we have azotemia will be seen, and also we see pre-renal kidney failure is seen, azotemia, pre-renal kidney failure. And in irreversible side effects, there can be renal tubular acidosis is seen with hypokalemia, and hypomagnesemia is seen if more than 4 grams of cumulative dose is given. So infusion related side effects can be of two types. One, we have reversible, second we have irreversible. In reversible side effects, we have azotemia and pre-renal kidney failure, and in irreversible side effects, we have renal tubular acidosis with hypokalemia and hypomagnesemia if more than 4 grams of cumulative dose. To decrease toxicity, lipid is added as a vehicle. So here, in order to decrease this toxicity, we use lipid is added as a vehicle, and this results in formation of liposomal amphotericin B. This liposomal amphotericin B is drug of choice in patients suffering from Kala-Azar. Next, the next important is, in these patients, you can see the side effect of nephrotoxicity is prominent in amphotericin B. This nephrotoxicity decreases by infusion of normal saline. It decreases by infusion of normal saline before giving amphotericin B. Okay, this amphotericin B is actually made in dextrose. It is made in dextrose. Then, whenever there is decrease in erythropoietin, this amphotericin B also causes decrease in erythropoietin, leading to anemia. So, if you see the interactions, in interactions it causes flu cytosine. Flu cytosine will combine with amphotericin B and it causes toxicity. And also amphotericin B will combine with aminoglycosides, or it is combined with vancomycin, or it is combined with cyclosporin. Amphotericin B is combined with aminoglycoside, vancomycin and cyclosporin, and thus it increases the renal toxicity. So amphotericin B combined with aminoglycosides, vancomycin and cyclosporin. Amphotericin B combines with aminoglycosides, vancomycin and cyclosporin, and thus it increases the renal toxicity. Then it will also bind with sterols and also lipoproteins. It will bind with sterols and lipoproteins in the plasma for longer periods. Okay. Then if you see the types of amphotericin B is of 3 types. First, we have conventional amphotericin B. This conventional amphotericin B is actually amphotericin B plus deoxycholate in dry powder form. Amphotericin B plus deoxycholate in dry powder form is called as conventional amphotericin B. Then we have liposomal amphotericin B. This liposomal antitericin B, it includes 10% amphotericin B, is incorporated in the uniformly or lamellated liposome. If 10 mg of amphotericin B is incorporated into uniform sized or lamellar liposome with lecithin and biodegradable phospholipids, then we call it as liposomal amphotericin B. Then we have colloidal amphotericin B. In colloidal amphotericin B, we have lipid preparation will be present in colloidal amphotericin B. Then we have next important is we have nystatin. Nystatin is actually used topically. Nystatin is used topically and it is used for local fungal infection. Nystatin is used topically for local fungal infections, like it can be used for candida infections or vaginal candidiasis, you can use it, or it can be used for oropharyngeal thrush also. It can be used for oropharyngeal thrush. So nystatin is used for local fungal infection like candidial infection, vaginal candidiasis, and it is used for oropharyngeal thrush. Then we have azoles. Azoles are actually, these azoles will inhibit fungal cytochrome P450. These will inhibit fungal cytochrome P450 enzyme. And example are lanosterol. We have lanosterol 14 demethylase. We have lanosterol 14 demethylase. So this lanosterol 14 demethylase, it will impair the ergosterol synthesis. Once it impairs the ergosterol synthesis, it will cause membrane abnormalities are seen. So azoles are, these will impair the ergosterol synthesis and causes membrane abnormalities. Now in the types of azoles, we have imidazole and then we have triazoles. So in the imidazoles, we have ketoconazole and miconazole. Then we have cotrimazole, econazole. So if you see imidazole is less selective and there are more drug interactions and side effects are seen. In imidazole, these are less selective and you see more drug interactions and side effects are seen. So first, if you see ketoconazole will inhibit cytochrome P450 enzyme. Ketoconazole inhibits cytochrome P450 enzyme, and this ketoconazole is used topically in seborrheic dermatitis. It is used topically in seborrheic dermatitis and it is also used for tinea versicolor also. Then we have miconazole. Miconazole and cotrimazole, if you see, these are used topically for vulvovaginal candidiasis. They are used topically for vulvovaginal candidiasis and oral thrush, and also they are used for dermatophytic infections. Imidazole is less sedative and more drug interactions and side effects are seen. Ketoconazole inhibits cytochrome P450 and it is systemically not used. The ketoconazole is used topically in seborrheic dermatitis, that is tinea versicolor. Side effects are it inhibits steroids from adrenals and glands. So this ketoconazole, because it inhibits the steroids from adrenals and glands, this ketoconazole also has the side effect of gynecomastia, which is very important, and it also suppresses the adrenals, and as a result it is also used in the treatment of cirrhosis, has anti-adrenal gland, has hormonal drug. Okay, next miconazole and cotrimazole. Miconazole and cotrimazole are used in topical, has vulvovaginal candidiasis, oral thrush and dermatophytic infections. Miconazole and cotrimazole are used topically, has vulvovaginal candidiasis, oral thrush and dermatophytic infections. Econazole can also be used. Then we have triazole. Triazole have drug interactions and side effects. These include itraconazole, and we have variconazole, and then we have fluconazole, then we have posaconazole, then we have isavuconazole. So we have itraconazole, variconazole, fluconazole, posaconazole, isavuconazole are present in triazoles. Triazoles have less drug interactions and side effects, which include itraconazole, variconazole, fluconazole, posaconazole and isavuconazole. So if you see, first we have itraconazole. Itraconazole is used as drug of choice for histoplasma. Then it can be used as drug of choice for Sporothrix shenkai, and it can be used as drug of choice for blastomyces. and also for paracoccidioidomycosis and coccidioidomycosis. It is also used in treatment of febrile neutropenia. So this itraconazole is used as drug of choice for histoplasma, Sporothrix shenkai, blastomyces, coccidioidomyces. Then we have paracoccidioidomycosis. It can be used as treatment of febrile neutropenia, and this also the entry into CNS is limited for this itraconazole, so it is not used in CNS infections. We do not use itraconazole in CNS infections, but it is used in most of the systemic mycosis. Then we have the next is fluconazole. Fluconazole has widest therapeutic dose and it is only one which is renally excreted. This fluconazole has maximum oral bioavailability. So it inhibits, it will penetrate the CNS penetration, it causes CNS penetration, and it is metabolized in the liver. So the drug of choice for fluconazole is candidiasis is the drug of choice for fluconazole. And in the fluconazole, the one more is this fluconazole is also used as prophylaxis of cryptococcal meningitis. It can be used as prophylaxis for cryptococcal meningitis. So fluconazole is used as a fluconazole can undergo CNS penetration. So drug of choice for candidiasis is fluconazole. Because it undergoes CNS penetration, it can also be used as prophylaxis of cryptococcal meningitis. But prophylaxis we use fluconazole. But what about the drug of choice for cryptococcal meningitis? The drug of choice for cryptococcal meningitis is actually amphotericin B is the drug of choice for cryptococcal meningitis. Then we have posaconazole. So this drug posaconazole has broadest spectrum among the triazoles. It has the broadest spectrum among the triazoles, and this posaconazole is actually the first azole which is effective against mucormycosis. Posaconazole is the first azole which is effective against mucormycosis is posaconazole. Posaconazole is the first azole to be effective against mucormycosis. But what is the drug of choice for mucormycosis? Amphotericin B is the drug of choice for mucormycosis. But the first azole which is effective for mucormycosis is posaconazole. Then we have one more drug which is voriconazole. This voriconazole is actually has shortest half-life, and this voriconazole is used as drug of choice in invasive aspergillosis. It has shortest half-life and it is used as a drug of choice in invasive aspergillosis. It can be used in fusarium or it can be used in pseudosporium. So this voriconazole has shortest half-life and it can be used for drug of choice for invasive aspergillosis, fusarium and pseudosporium. Then we have one more drug which is called as isovuconazole. This isovuconazole is actually, it has longest half-life. Isovuconazole has longest half-life of 130 hours. And it is used in invasive aspergillosis and it is also used in mucormycosis. It is used in invasive aspergillosis and mucormycosis. We can use isovuconazole. We have side effects of azoles. If you see the side effects, it can cause GI upset. It can cause like diarrhea, GI upset. It can also cause rash, hepatotoxicity in pre-existing renal function. It can cause QT prolongation. And it can also cause visual disturbances like blurred vision. Altered color perception and photophobia can also be seen. So in long-term uses, it can cause multi-step phototoxic process like actinic keratosis can be seen, which will cause squamous cell carcinoma. So long-term use can cause squamous cell carcinoma in azoles. Then we have allylamines. So what does these allylamines do? These allylamines will inhibit the squalene epoxide. These will inhibit squalene epoxide. These will inhibit squalene epoxide and thus they will cause accumulation of squalene will occur, and thus this accumulation of squalene is actually toxic to fungus. Then if you see this about the allylamine, the drug of choice is dermatophytosis is the drug of choice, and also onychomycosis is the drug of choice. Dermatophytosis and onychomycosis is drug of choice for allylamines. So allylamines will inhibit squalene epoxide and these will also inhibit the accumulation of squalene, which is toxic to fungus. Then we have heterocyclic benzofurans, which are we have griseofulvin. So if you see griseofulvin, this will inhibit mitosis. This will interfere with mitosis, and thus the multinucleated stuntal fungal hyphae will be produced. Because it will interfere with mitosis, the nuclear production will continue, replication will continue, but the cell do not divide. So as a result, if the nuclear replication has continued but the cell do not divide, so as a result, you will see this division is not occurred. You will see presence of multinucleated stunted fungal hyphae production will be seen. So this will inhibit the polymerization of tissues and tubules. It will inhibit the polymerization of tubules so that the daughter cells fail to move apart. So if you see the pharmacokinetics, it is less soluble in water and thus it has irregular absorption. It is actually deposited in the keratin. It is deposited in the keratin forming cells like hair, nail and skin, and thus it prevents the fungal invasion on the skin. It is deposited in keratin forming cells of hair, skin and nails, and thus it prevents the fungal invasion to the skin. But fungi can persist in infected skin if it is shed off. But fungi can persist in the infected skin if it is shed off. So duration of treatment mainly depends upon the site of infection, thickness of the infected keratin. Now this keratin is of two types. This keratin can be in skin and hairs, and it can be in nails also. Keratin can be in skin and hairs for 6 weeks, whereas in the nails it can be for 4 weeks. Keratin lives for 6 weeks in skin and hair, and it lives for 2 to 4 months in nails. So if on giving griseofulvin, so you should give the therapy for 6 weeks in skin and hair, and it should be given for 2 to 4 months for nails. Okay. Absorption mainly increases in the presence of fatty foods. Then uses are, you can use griseofulvin is used with dermatophytes. Then if you see side effects, it causes this griseofulvin most important, it causes disulfiram like reaction, and it also causes lupus like reaction. It causes disulfiram like reaction, and it causes lupus like reaction. It causes peripheral neuritis, and it also causes headache in the patients. It causes serum sickness and allergy like rashes, photoallergy. It causes lupus-like symptoms, disulfiram-like reaction, peripheral neuritis, headache, and GI side effects are seen. Uses are, it can be used in dermatophytes. Then we have next important is we can have fungal cell wall inhibitors. In fungal cell wall inhibitors are echinocandins are fungal cell wall inhibitors. In echinocandins we have caspofungin. Okay, we have caspofungin. Then we have micofungin will occur, and we have anidulafungin. So we have caspofungin, micofungin, and anidulafungin are echinocandins, and these echinocandins will inhibit beta-1,3 glucan synthesis. This echinocandins will inhibit beta-1,3 glucan synthesis, and thus it will weaken the cell wall, and once it weakens the cell wall, it will cause osmotic susceptibility of the cells, and as a result it will destroy the cells. Okay, so uses of these echinocandins are, it can be used in candida and aspergillosis, and these echinocandins can be used as drug of choice for empirical therapy. Echinocandins can be used as drug of choice for empirical therapy as antifungals for patients with neutropenia. For patients with neutropenia, you should use echinocandins as an empirical therapy as for antifungals for patients with neutropenia. Then the next important is we have antimetabolites. In the antimetabolites, first we have flucytosine. The flucytosine is actually a pyrimidine analog. It is a pyrimidine analog which is taken up by the cytosine permease. It is a pyrimidine analog taken up by the cytosine permease, and it will get converted into 5-fluorouridylic acid. It gets converted into 5-fluorodeoxy. It will get converted into 5-fluorodeoxyuridylic acid, and this will actually inhibit the thiamine synthesis. One main important thing is this will inhibit the thiamidylate synthesis. And where is it used? It is used in, it can be used in Cryptococcus, Neoformis and Candida. It can be used. It causes side effects like bone marrow suppression will occur. Because of bone marrow suppression, it will lead to anemia, leukopenia and thrombocytopenia can occur. Because of bone marrow suppression, it will lead to anemia, leukopenia and thrombocytopenia can occur with hepatotoxicity and enterocolitis. Then this flu cytosine will combine with amphotericin B. This flu cytosine will combine with amphotericin B, and it has good synergism. Okay, this flu cytosine combines with amphotericin B and it has good synergism. This flu cytosine will penetrate well with the through the amphotericin will create pores in the cell wall. Through these pores, the flu cytosine drug can enter in. Okay, then we have newer antifungal drugs like tavobrol. We have tavobarol. This tavobarol will actually inhibit the protein synthesis. It inhibits the fungal protein synthesis. Then we have cyclopirox. This cyclopirox will mainly inhibit the cream lotion, and it is mainly used in dermatophytes and candidiasis and tinea versicolor. It is used in dermatophytes, candidiasis and tinea versicolor. This cyclopirox has 8% nail lacquer. It has 8% nail lacquer, and it is actually approved for onychomycosis. It is approved for onychomycosis. So tavobarol inhibits the fungal protein synthesis. Cyclopirox will inhibit the cell membrane, and this cyclopirox is used as 1% cream lotion in dermatophytosis and candidiasis and tinea versicolor. And this cyclopirox is also used as 8% nail lacquer, and it is approved for onychomycosis. Then the next important drugs are antiviral drugs. Antiviral agents, we have one antiviral agent which is entry inhibitor is present, and this entry inhibitor is actually maraviroc. Maraviroc or CCR5 inhibitors are seen. Maraviroc or CCR5 inhibitors, these maraviroc will inhibit the CCR5 receptor, and this will inhibit the attachment and entry of the cell. This will inhibit the attachment and entry of the cell. So this is used along with other antiretroviral drugs and used as a second line. It is used with other antiretroviral drugs and is used as a second line. So if you see the side effects of them, it can cause upper respiratory tract infections. It can cause cough, fever, and myalgia. It is associated with myocardial infarction, and it is also associated with hepatic toxicity. And the only active form against CC, it is the only active form which is present against CCR5 tropic virus. Thus, this CCR5 tropic virus has co-receptor tropism assay, and it should be performed before starting it. Then, this CCR5 tropic virus, is actually a type of HIV-1 virus. It is a type of HIV-1 virus. Then we have entry or fusion inhibitors. So, in entry or fusion inhibitors, which includes fuvertide, we have fuvertide. If fuvertide will bind to the GP41, fuvertide will bind to the GP41 of HIV, and thus it inhibits the fusion of the virus, and also it inhibits the entry of the virus into the host cells. Okay, so this fuvertide will combine with GP41 of HIV-1, and it inhibits the fusion and inhibits the entry of virus into the host cell. This fuvertide has subcutaneous route, and it is the only parenteral retroviral. It is the only parenteral antiretroviral. Then if you see the side effects of fuvertide, side effects are it causes injection site reaction will be seen, and then you will see insomnia and dizziness will be seen, and it is not effective against HIV-2. It is not effective against HIV-2, and it is mainly used as a second line agent. Okay, so this is fuvertide. Fuvertide will bind to the GP41 of HIV-1 of virus and inhibits the fusion, and it also inhibits the entry of virus into the host. So this fuvertide is used by subcutaneous route, and it is the only parenteral antiretroviral. The side effects are it causes injection site reaction with insomnia and dizziness, and it is not effective against HIV-2, and it is used as a second line agent. This is fuvertide. Then next we have ibalizumab. Ibalizumab is a monoclonal antibody which is present against the HIV-1, and this will block this ibalizumab is a monoclonal antibody against HIV-1. It will block the domain 2, it will block domain 2 of CD4 cell receptor. It will block the domain 2 of CD4 cell receptor, and thus it will inhibit the viral entry. So, idalizumab is a monoclonal antibody against the HIV-1 which blocks the domain 2 of CD4 cell receptor and inhibits the viral entry. We also have GAG gene inhibitors. There are some drugs which inhibit GAG gene, like we have bevirimat, and we also have Vivekon. We have bevirimat and Vivekon. These bevirimat and Vivekon will inhibit GAG gene and they are required for maturation. This bevirimat and also Vivekon are under trial agents. Then we have tecovirimat. Tecovirimat is actually approved for smallpox. It is approved for smallpox virus. Tecovirimat is approved for smallpox virus. Okay, bevirimat and Vivekon. Bevirimat and Vivekon will inhibit GAG gene, whereas tecovirimat is approved for chickenpox. Then we have reverse transcriptase inhibitors. In this first nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. This is nucleoside. These nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors include, we have zidovudin, then we have abacavir, diadenosine, lamivudin, stavudin will be there, and then we have emtricitabine also, emtricitabine. Okay, so these nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors include zidovudin, abacavir, diadenosine, lamivudin, emtricitabine, and stavudin. Okay, now the first is we have zalcitabine. Zalcitabine is actually withdrawn. Zalcitabine is withdrawn, and the side effect of zalcitabine is it can cause aphthous ulcers. Okay, then it can also cause stomatitis. Zalcitabine can cause aphthous ulcers, stomatitis. It can cause peripheral neuropathy can occur, and it can also cause pancreatitis. So because of the side effects like aphthous ulcers, stomatitis, peripheral neuropathy, and pancreatitis, this zalcitabine is withdrawn. Zalcitabine is withdrawn due to the side effects of aphthous ulcers, stomatitis, peripheral neuropathy, and pancreatitis. Next, if you see one important thing, all nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, all these are associated with mitochondrial toxicity. All these are associated with mitochondrial toxicity, and then all these will inhibit DNA polymerase also. All these are associated with mitochondrial toxicity, and all these will inhibit DNA polymerase, which will cause bone marrow suppression. Like this will cause anemia. Okay, because of inhibition of DNA polymerase, there will be bone marrow suppression causing anemia. Then we have neutropenia, and the maximum bone marrow suppression is caused by zidovudin. Zidovudin will cause maximum bone marrow suppression. Okay, next. The next important is we have pancreatitis is one of the side effects which is maximum caused by diadenosine. Diadenosine will cause maximum pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is maximum caused by diadenosine. Diadenosine will cause pancreatitis. Next, we have lipoatrophy. We have lipoatrophy or insulin resistance. Okay, and then peripheral neuropathy, lipoatrophy, insulin resistance, and peripheral neuropathy. All these are actually maximum with stavudin. Okay, lipoatrophy, insulin resistance, and peripheral neuropathy are maximum with stavudin. Other side effects like hepatic steatosis and lactic acidosis are also seen with nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. Then if you see the specific side effects, we have abacavir. Abacavir has increased the risk of myocardial infarction and pharyngitis. And this abacavir is metabolized by alcoholic dehydrogenases. So it is used as toxic in alcoholics. So this abacavir increases the risk of myocardial infarction and pharyngitis. It is metabolized by alcoholic dehydrogenase, and thus it is toxic in alcoholics. And this abacavir also causes hypersensitivity reaction in patients with HLA-B5701 allele. It causes hypersensitivity in patients with HLA-B5701 allele. So as a result, it is not given for those patients who possess this HLA-B5701 allele. Then we have lamivudine. This lamivudine is actually the drug which is least associated with pancreatitis, and it is also least associated with peripheral neuropathy. This lamivudine is actually the safest nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, and it is also effective against hepatitis B. It can also be used against hepatitis B. Then we have emtricitabine. Emtricitabine is actually a sole and palm pigmentation. Emtricitabine will cause sole and palm pigmentation. So this emtricitabine is used in HIV and HPV also. It causes sole and palm pigmentation as a side effect. That is emtricitabine. Then we have two combinations which are contraindicated together are lamivudine should not be given with emtricitabine because these both will have cross resistance. Okay. Then we have zidovudine. Zidovudine should not be given with stavudine. Why? Because of cross resistance. This zidovudine will inhibit the phosphorylation of stavudine. So zidovudine should not be given with stavudine. Then we have diadenosine. Diadenosine should not be given with stavudine. Why? Both diadenosine and stavudine have similar side effect profile. Then if you see the next important drug, diadenosine. This diadenosine is the oral bioavailability of diadenosine decreases with food, and this diadenosine causes side effects like optic neuritis and peripheral uricemia is seen. There is increased uric acid, and you will also see presence of electrolyte abnormalities are also seen in the patient. Next, this diadenosine will also result in fulminant hepatic failure will occur in diadenosine. So diadenosine, it is associated, its oral bioavailability decreases with food. It causes optic neuritis. Side effects of diadenosine include optic neuritis, hyperuricemia, electrolyte abnormalities, and fulminant hepatic failure is seen with diadenosine. Then we have zidovudine. Zidovudine is actually used as prophylaxis for needle stick injury. It is used for prophylaxis for needle stick injury. Then the main side effect of zidovudine is it causes bone marrow suppression, and it can also cause myopathy as a side effect. It can cause nail hyperpigmentation can occur as a side effect. Then rifampicin. Rifampicin will increase the clearance of the drug. Rifampicin will increase the clearance of the drug. This rifampicin is contraindicated if hemoglobin is less than 85%. This rifampicin is contraindicated if hemoglobin is less than 85%. Then in this zidovudine, if you see, this zidovudine, it is gets converted to zidovudine triphosphate, and then this zidovudine triphosphate inhibits the enzyme reverse transcriptase, which will convert viral DNA into double-stranded proviral DNA. So it will convert viral DNA into double-stranded proviral DNA. So zidovudine gets converted to zidovudine triphosphate, and it inhibits reverse transcriptase. So with the help of reverse transcriptase, single-stranded viral DNA gets converted to double-stranded proviral DNA. Now, if you see pharmacokinetics, this is actually metabolized by glucuronidation. It is metabolized by glucuronidation, and it will cross the blood-brain barrier and the placenta. It will cross the blood-brain barrier and also placenta. Now, resistance is acquired by point mutation altering the reverse transcriptase. Next, the next important is we have nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors. So in nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, we have two drugs. One, we have tenofovir. We have only one drug, tenofovir. Tenofovir is of two forms. One, we have tenofovir disoproxil. Tenofovir disoproxil fumarate. One is tenofovir disoproxil fumarate. And second type, we have tenofovir. It is tenofovir alafenamide. Tenofovir alafenamide. So one, we have tenofovir disoproxil fumarate. Second, we have tenofovir alafenamide. So this tenofovir alafenamide has less renal and it has less bone side effects. It has less renal and it has less bone side effects. Whereas tenofovir disoproxil fumarate. So in pregnancy, this tenofovir is used as pre-exposure prophylaxis. In pregnancy, tenofovir is used as pre-exposure prophylaxis. It is used as pre-exposure prophylaxis. Then there is no activation by kidney occurs. It is contraindicated with probenecid. It is contraindicated with probenecid. Then as it increases the toxicity. Now, if you see side effects are GI side effects include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. It also causes osteomalacia will occur. Okay, then it can cause phosphate and calcium loss will be seen, and there can be tubulopathy will also be seen, and there can be acute renal failure with Fanconi syndrome. Acute renal failure and Fanconi syndrome is seen in patients with tenofovir. Tenofovir is tenofovir disoproxil fumarate and tenofovir alafenamide. This tenofovir alafenamide has less renal and bone side effects. Then, in pregnancy, it is used as a pre-exposure prophylaxis and no activation by kidney. It is contraindicated with probenecid as it increases the toxicity. Side effects like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea are seen along with osteomalacia. Phosphate and calcium loss is seen with tubulopathy. Acute renal failure and Fanconi syndrome is seen. Then we have non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. In non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, we have two types. First generation reverse transcriptase inhibitors, second generation non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. First generation non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors include delavirdin, and we have efavirenz. Delavirdin, we have efavirenz, and we have nevirapine. Delavirdin, efavirenz, and nevirapine are first generation reverse transcriptase inhibitors. Second generation reverse transcriptase inhibitors are rilpivirine. Then we have etravirine. We have rilpivirine. We have etravirine, and we have dolavirine. So in first generation reverse transcriptase inhibitors, we have delavirdin, then we have efavirenz, and then we have nevirapine. Delavirdin, efavirenz, and nevirapine are seen in first generation reverse transcriptase inhibitors, and in second generation reverse transcriptase inhibitors, we have rilpivirine, etravirine, and dolavirine. We have rilpivirine, etravirine, and dolavirine. Then these do not compete for nucleoside triphosphates, and these do not require phosphorylation or activation. These do not compete for nucleoside triphosphates, and these do not require phosphorylation for activation. These non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors increase the resistance, intrinsic resistance by HIV2. So used for HIV1. So these are mainly used for HIV1, not for HIV2. Okay. Now, resistance by point mutation of the enzyme and cross resistance is also common in these diseases. So if you see the side effects, the most common side effect it causes rash. Okay, it also causes drug interactions which are metabolized by cytochrome P450 are also seen. Then we have delavirdin. So if you see this delavirdin can be used as it was used in animal model and it is found to be teratogenic. This delavirdin is used in animal model and it is found to be teratogenic. Then if you see this efavirenz causes CNS toxicity, like it causes drowsiness, dizziness, insomnia, and psychosis. This efavirenz also causes crystalluria also. It causes CNS toxicity and it can also cause crystalluria. Then we have etravirine. This etravirine is an altered lipid profile. It is an altered lipid profile. It produces altered lipid profile and it can be used in HIV1 if resistance with first generation. If there is any resistance with first generation, then you can use the second generation etravirine. Okay, then we have nevirapine. So if you see nevirapine is actually used in prophylaxis for mother to child transmission of HIV. For mother to child transmission of HIV, this nevirapine is used. Then oral bioavailability of nevirapine is 90%, and this oral bioavailability is the drug of choice. So because of its good oral bioavailability, nevirapine is the drug of choice for neonatal prophylaxis, mainly to prevent the mother to child transmission. Single 200 milligrams is present at the onset of labor. If baby is born, it becomes 2 milligrams per kg started within 72 hours. Then the main side effect of nevirapine is presence of rash. Rash is the most common side effect, and this can also cause Stevens-Johnson syndrome and toxic epidermal necrolysis. Rash can occur, toxic shock syndrome and toxic epidermal necrolysis is seen. It can also cause hepatotoxicity. Then the drugs. Delavirdin and efavirenz are actually avoided in first trimester of pregnancy. And this nevirapine and efavirenz. This nevirapine and efavirenz, both these are CYP450 in inducers. Nevirapine and efavirenz are CYP450 inducers, and delavirdin and efavirenz are avoided in the first trimester of pregnancy. Protease inhibitors. In protease inhibitors, we have atazanavir, then we have darunavir, we have atazanavir, darunavir, then we have tipranavir, then we have nelfinavir, then we have ritonavir, then we have saquinavir, and then we have lopinavir, and we have indinavir. So we have atazanavir, darunavir, tipranavir, nelfinavir, ritonavir, saquinavir, lopinavir, and indinavir. These are protease inhibitors. These protease inhibitors, these are not used alone due to the resistance. They will inhibit CYP3A4. They will inhibit CYP3A4, and they have maximum inhibition is present with ritonavir. They have maximum inhibition is seen with ritonavir. So because they produce maximum inhibition with ritonavir, so this ritonavir is added to other protease inhibitor. This ritonavir giving along with other protease inhibitor, this is called as ritonavir boosting. This is called as ritonavir boosting. Then we have cobicistat. There is a drug which is called as cobicistat. This cobicistat is also a potent inhibitor of CYP3A4. This can also be added with any protease inhibitor and integrase inhibitor. Okay. Next, if you see the side effects, it causes first bleeding. GI side effects are most common. Number 1, it causes other side effects like the drugs which increase bleeding risk are, we have drugs like tipranavir and also ritonavir. Tipranavir and ritonavir. We have tipranavir and ritonavir which increase the bleeding risk. So this bleeding risk will increase the intracranial bleed. Thus, intracranial bleeding is common with both tipranavir and ritonavir. Intracranial bleeding is normal. Then, if you see hepatotoxicity, hepatotoxicity is caused maximum with tipranavir and ritonavir. Tipranavir and ritonavir also have hepatotoxicity. So tipranavir and ritonavir will have two things. One, it will have bleeding risk. Second, it will have hepatotoxicity. Then we have hyperbilirubinemia. Hyperbilirubinemia, this has maximum with atazanavir and indinavir. Hyperbilirubinemia is maximum with atazanavir and indinavir. Hyperbilirubinemia is maximum with atazanavir and indinavir, and it also causes cardiac conduction abnormalities. Will occur, like increased QT prolongation is seen with the help of atazanavir and indinavir. Okay, hepatotoxicity, it causes hepatitis maximum with tipranavir and ritonavir. Then it also causes hyperbilirubinemia, which is maximum with atazanavir and indinavir. It also causes cardiac conduction abnormalities are seen, like increased QT prolongation is seen. Then it also causes lipodystrophy. So lipodystrophy syndrome can occur. This lipodystrophy syndrome will result in metabolic derangement, and thus it increases the glucose levels, and it also causes altered lipid profile is seen. Okay, it causes metabolic derangement with increased glucose and altered lipid profile is seen. This lipodystrophy also causes breast engorgement. This will also cause dorsocervical fat, and also there will be development of buffalo hump will be seen in the person. Okay, so that is lipodystrophy. Next we have the drugs. So if you see the drugs, the first drug which is important is we have atazanavir. Atazanavir is least associated with dyslipidemia and hyperglycemia. It is the least associated with dyslipidemia and hyperglycemia. Okay, the side effects of atazanavir are it causes renal and gallstone formation, and it causes hyperbilirubinemia, and it decreases the bone mineral density, and it increases the PR interval is increased in the ECG. It is not given with proton pump inhibitors. The atazanavir is least associated with dyslipidemia and hyperglycemia. The side effects of atazanavir are renal and gallstone formation, hyperbilirubinemia. It also causes decreased bone mineral density and increased PR interval in ECG is seen in atazanavir. Then we have the drugs like tenofovir, and efavirenz. The drugs like tenofovir and efavirenz, these both will actually decrease the concentration of atazanavir. They will decrease the concentration of atazanavir. So if used with these drugs, always boost with ritonavir. So if used along with these drugs, always you should boost with ritonavir. Then we have indinavir. Indinavir, the side effect of indinavir is hyperbilirubinemia. Side effect is hyperbilirubinemia, and there are also renal stones are seen, like there can be crystal urea is seen. Okay, crystal urea is seen, and there can be acute renal failure with interstitial fibrosis, and MI are the side effects. Indinavir produces side effects like hyperbilirubinemia, renal stones causing crystal urea, acute renal failure, interstitial fibrosis, increased myocardial infarction, oral and bioavailability, and also decreases with food. Then we have the drug tiprinavir. Tiprinavir is used along with other protease inhibitors. It is used along with other protease inhibitors that are actually resistant. It is used only when all the other protease inhibitors are resistant. Then you use tiprinavir. It is the last line. Why tiprinavir will cause side effects like bleeding manifestations will cause, and it will also cause intracranial hemorrhage. It also results in urticarial and maculopapular rash will be seen, and you will see hyperbilirubinemia is seen with tiprinavir. With rash, hepatotoxicity will be seen, and this is about tiprinavir. So tiprinavir is used only when other protease inhibitors are resistant. It causes side effects like bleeding risk, intracranial hemorrhage, urticarial, maculopapular rash. It causes hepatotoxicity, and it is the only non-peptide protease inhibitor. Then the next drug we have nelfinavir. This nelfinavir is also the only protease inhibitor. This nelfinavir is the only protease inhibitor for which ritonavir boosting is not recommended. This is the only protease inhibitor for which ritonavir boosting is not inhibited. Then the next one important drug which is important is we have tesamorelin. What is this tesamorelin? It is a synthetic analog of growth hormone releasing factor, and it is mainly indicated to decrease the abdominal fat in HIV infected patients with lipodystrophy. Then we have integrase inhibitors. So what does this integrase inhibitors do? These include raltegravir, and we have dolutegravir. Then we have elvitegravir. Raltegravir, dolutegravir, and we have elvitegravir. So these are integrase inhibitors. Okay. Next, what are the drugs which are used for HIV-induced diarrhea? If there is HIV-induced diarrhea, then we use the drugs like octreotide is used, and also crofelemer is used. Octreotide and crofelemer are used when for HIV-induced diarrhea. If the patient have HIV-induced lipodystrophy, then tesamorelin GHRH analog is used. Then if the patient have more Mycobacterium avium complex infection in the AIDS patient, then you can give the drugs like rifabutin can be given, and we can give ethambutol. Azithromycin and clarithromycin can be given. Okay, so you can give rifabutin, ethambutol, azithromycin, and clarithromycin can be given in Mycobacterium avium complex infection with AIDS patient. So if you see HIV therapy, that is highly active antiretroviral therapy. This highly active antiretroviral therapy should be started as soon as it is diagnosed. Earlier, it is used to be started when CD4 counts are less than 500 according to WHO, and whenever CD4 counts are less than 350 according to NACO guidelines. But now we start it as soon as diagnosed. CD4 count is not necessary. Whatever the CD4 count is, we give the drugs as soon as diagnosed. We should give 3 drugs from different classes. We should give 2 NRTIs plus 1 NNRTI should be given. 2 NRTIs and 1 NNRTI should be given together. Then the 2 NRTIs, like you can give zidovudine plus lamivudine can be given together with nevirapine. Zidovudine and lamivudine can be given together with nevirapine, and this combination of zidovudine, lamivudine and nevirapine is actually preferred in India. Then we have 2 NRTIs should be given along with NTRTI, which is nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, like tenofovir. So 2 NRTIs are, you can combine zidovudine with lamivudine and you can give it along with tenofovir. You can give zidovudine with lamivudine. It's given along with tenofovir. Then you can also combine 1 NRTI plus 1 NTRTI. Along with that, you can give 1 NNRTI. So 1 NRTI is tenofovir, and we have 1 NTRTI, which is lamivudine, and we have 1 NNRTI, which is efavirenz. So tenofovir, lamivudine and efavirenz can also be combined together. Then if you see in pregnancy, if the patient is pregnant, then what will be the schedule? Lamivudine combined with efavirenz. Lamivudine combined with efavirenz with tenofovir. Lamivudine, efavirenz and tenofovir are combined together in pregnancy. Then we have post-exposure prophylaxis. In post-exposure prophylaxis, if there is any needle stick injury, especially post-exposure prophylaxis with needle stick injury, that is HIV needle stick prick. Then if there is needle stick injury, then you should give post-exposure prophylaxis. So what do you give in post-exposure prophylaxis? First we have basic regimen. In basic regimen, you give 2 drugs, which is zidovudine and lamivudine is given for 4 weeks. Zidovudine and lamivudine is given mainly for 4 weeks in basic regimen. Then in expanded regimen, we can give zidovudine, can be given along with lamivudine, along with indinavir, protease inhibitors like indinavir, or you can also give saquinavir. Okay, in expanded regimen, you can give zidovudine with lamivudine with indinavir or saquinavir. You can give them these for post-exposure prophylaxis. These are also given for 4 weeks. Then if you see in pregnancy, that is in labor, you can give it in elective C-section. Okay, then in pregnancy, in labor, you can give 200 milligrams of nevirapine. 200 milligrams of nevirapine is given for the baby, especially for prophylaxis. You give 200 milligrams of nevirapine is given for the prophylaxis to the baby. Then the next group of drugs which are important are herpes simplex or anti-herpes drugs. So these anti-herpes drugs are actually include, we have iodoxuridine, trifluridine. This iodoxuridine and trifluridine are actually thymidylate analog, and these are incorporated into DNA, that is resulting in formation of faulty DNA can occur. So their use is 1% of their topically. They are used for herpes keratitis. They are used for herpes keratitis 1% topically. Then the next important drug is, we have acyclovir. Okay, this acyclovir is used. The mechanism of action is, it is a deoxyguanosine analog. This acyclovir, in the presence of herpes virus, specific thymidylate kinase, thymidine kinase, acyclovir gets converted to acyclovir monophosphate. Okay, this acyclovir monophosphate will again get converted to acyclovir triphosphate, and this acyclovir triphosphate will inhibit DNA polymerase competitively. It will inhibit DNA polymerase competitively. It will also get incorporated into the DNA virus. And stops lengthening of RNA. It will also get incorporated into the DNA virus and stops lengthening RNA. It penetrates the cornea well. Okay, the half-life of acyclovir is 2 to 3 hours, and it is used for frequent dosing. Also, you can use this acyclovir. The main side effect of acyclovir is production of rash is seen with BP, decreased BP and stinging sensation. And here you will see presence of nephrotoxicity will be seen, and also there will be neurotoxicity. And this neurotoxicity which you see here is actually reversible neurotoxicity you will see. And then if you see the treatment is you can use mucocutaneous and genital herpes. The treatment is it is used for mucocutaneous and genital herpes. Then it is also used for prophylaxis of herpes infection. It is used as prophylaxis for herpes infection in AIDS patients and also in immunocompromised. It is used as prophylaxis of herpes infection in AIDS patients and in immunocompromised. Then we have valcyclovir. Valcyclovir is a prodrug of acyclovir. Valcyclovir is a prodrug of acyclovir. It has longer half-life, and this valcyclovir is actually the drug of choice for herpes zoster. It is drug of choice for herpes zoster. That is valcyclovir. Then the next drug we have famciclovir. What is this famciclovir? It is a prodrug. The next drug we have is famciclovir. What is this famciclovir? It is a prodrug of penciclovir. Okay, penciclovir will give rise to vanciclovir. The use of famciclovir is it is used in HSV and HZV also. It can be used in nausea, vomiting, headache, and also it can be used in confusion and rashes. You can use this famciclovir. Then if you see in cytomegalovirus, you can use like in ganciclovir. Ganciclovir will inhibit DNA polymerase. Ganciclovir will inhibit DNA polymerase, and this ganciclovir actually has poor oral bioavailability and it has IV route. Okay, because of poor oral bioavailability, you should give it through IV. Then this ganciclovir is actually the drug of choice for CMV retinitis, and it is also important in CMV anogenital warts. It is also important in CMV anogenital warts. Then the side effect of ganciclovir is it causes bone marrow suppression, it causes neuropsychiatric side effects, and it also causes pulmonary infection. Then the next important drug which is important here is cidofovir. This cidofovir will inhibit DNA polymerase. Because it inhibits DNA polymerase, the use is it is used in cytomegalovirus, pox virus, adenovirus, it is used, and herpes simplex virus it can be used. It is used in CMV, cytomegalovirus, pox virus, adenovirus, and herpes simplex virus it is used. It has long half-life is used which shows weekly doses are seen in longer half-life. Then if you see the mechanism of resistance, it causes mutation in DNA polymerase is involved. It is used in mutation in DNA polymerase. And then if you see the side effects, it causes dose-limited side effects like it causes nephrotoxicity. It also causes ocular toxicity. Thus, because it causes ocular toxicity, this cidofovir can result in uveitis and it can also result in iritis. It can also cause potential human carcinogen. It is a potential human carcinogen. Then next important thing is foscarnet. So this foscarnet is used mainly in the resistant cases. That is, it is used in the acyclovir resistant cases for acyclovir resistant cases for HSV, and it is also used for ganciclovir resistant cases. It is used for ganciclovir resistant cases in cytomegalovirus. Now, if you see the foscarnet mechanism of action, it inhibits the DNA polymerase. Now, this foscarnet will inhibit the DNA polymerase and it will also inhibit the reverse transcriptase enzyme without activating by phosphorylation. So it is used in IV route also. So if you see the half-life of foscarnet is 3 to 7 hours is the half-life of foscarnet. It will inhibit the DNA polymerase and also inhibit reverse transcriptase including HIV. Then if you see the side effect, this foscarnet will come and it will deposit in the bone. It will cause nephrotoxicity. It will cause symptomatic hypomagnesemia will be seen. It causes hypocalcemia. It causes hypo or hyperphosphatemia. It causes hypokalemia. It also causes genital ulceration are seen, and also it causes CNS side effects like headache, hallucinations, and seizures will occur due to foscarnet. Then if you see the uses of foscarnet, uses are it can be used in herpes simplex virus, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, and human herpes virus 6 and 8, and it can also be used in herpes simplex virus 1 and 2. Then the next important drug which can be used here is then the next drugs are anti-influenza drugs, are next group of drugs. So in anti-influenza drugs, one we have amantadine. What is this amantadine? Amantadine is actually also called as rimantadine. So this will bind to the M2 designated protein and it will block the uncoating and coating and viral assembly. And thus, because it blocks the uncoating and viral assembly, and thus it will inhibit the replication. Mainly it is inhibiting the replication of influenza virus. So if you see pharmacokinetics, this amantadine has good oral availability. So as a result, you could give it 100 milligrams BD. So it also causes side effects like nausea, anxiety, anorexia, dizziness, nightmares, lack of concentration, hallucinations, ankle edema, and dry mouth are seen. It also causes resistance, that is mutations causing amino acid substitution in M2 protein. It causes mutation causing amino acid substitution in M2 protein. The use of these anti-influenza drugs these are used in the treatment of influenza A and Parkinsonism. These are used in the treatment of influenza A and Parkinsonism. Then we have zanamivir. Zanamivir is actually used as an inhalational route. And this zanamivir is used as an inhalational use, and it is 10 milligrams of zanamivir is given, and this zanamivir is present against the influenza A. It is present against the influenza A. And if you see the side effects of zanamivir, these include, we have bronchospasm, and then we have cough, nasal congestion is seen, and also you will see neutropenia in the patient. So zanamivir, if you see zanamivir, it is used in inhalational use. It is an inhaler, 10 milligrams, acts against influenza A and B. It causes bronchospasm, cough, and it also causes nasal congestion and neutropenia. Then the next important drug we have is oseltamivir. Oseltamivir is also similar to zanamivir. It will get converted to oseltamivir carboxylate, and this will also inhibit neuraminidase enzyme. So as a result, once it inhibits neuraminidase enzyme, release of the progeny virus is lost. And as a result, the virus cannot replicate. So if you see pharmacokinetics, it is also given orally, has 75 milligrams BD, and it can cause side effects like nausea, vomiting. It is actually used as drug of choice for bird flu. And it is also drug of choice for swine flu. Remember one thing about this zanamivir and oseltamivir. These both can cause neuropsychiatric. Zanamivir and oseltamivir, both these will cause neuropsychiatric side effects. They will cause neuropsychiatric symptoms, side effects, and it increases the suicidal. Both these will increase the suicidal tendency also. They will cause neuropsychiatric side effects and increase the suicidal tendency. Now, next we have anti-hepatic drugs. So in the anti-hepatitis drugs, these are most commonly, we have hepatitis B is the anti-hepatic drug and exclusively used by fecal-oral route. Exclusively, if you were asked what is the which hepatitis is exclusively which hepatitis will go through fecal-oral route, then that is hepatitis E. It is also most commonly associated with hepatocellular carcinoma. Which is most commonly associated with hepatocellular carcinoma? It is hepatitis B virus is more commonly affected than hepatitis C virus. Hepatitis B virus is most commonly affected with hepatocellular carcinoma than hepatitis C virus. Most commonly associated with cirrhosis. Which is most commonly associated with cirrhosis? Hepatitis C virus is most commonly associated with cirrhosis. Now, if you see first hepatitis B virus. In hepatitis B virus, you have two stages. First, acute stage of hepatitis B, and you have chronic stage of hepatitis B. In acute stage of hepatitis B, if there is HBsAg is positive to the person, then you will have to wait. You will have to wait till anti-HBs antigen is produced, until you give supportive treatment. You should wait. So if in acute cases, if HBsAg is positive, you should wait until anti-HBsAg is positive and you should give supportive treatment. Then if you see in chronic treatment, in chronic stage you have lamivudine. You have lamivudine, which is given as nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors. Then we have entecavir, which will inhibit DNA polymerase. Entecavir will inhibit DNA polymerase, whereas Ramivudine, which is nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, and even tenofovir can also be given in hepatitis B, chronic hepatitis B, which is nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors. Okay, then other drugs like edifovir can also be given, which inhibits the DNA polymerase again, and one more DNA polymerase inhibitor which can be given is telbivudine can be given. Edafovir and telbivudine can be given, which are DNA polymerase inhibitors. Now, if you see this edafovir, edafovir will cause lactic acidosis. This will cause lactic acidosis and it will also cause nephrotoxicity. Next we have interferon 2 alpha 2A. We have interferon alpha 2A, which has a dosage of 2.5 to 5 milliunits per meter square. We have interferon alpha 2A, which has 2.5 to 5 milliunits per meter square thrice per week for 4 to 6 weeks. Thrice per week for 4 to 6 weeks. Then we have next important, which is PEG interferon. Okay, this PEG interferon has longer half-life. This PEG interferon has longer half-life, so it is used in hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus, and it is also used in AIDS-related Kaposi's sarcoma. It is used in AIDS-related Kaposi's sarcoma. So first we have interferon alpha 2A, which is 2.5 to 5 milliunits per meter square thrice per week for 4 to 6 weeks, whereas we have PEG interferon can be given, which has a longer half-life, and this PEG interferon uses hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus, and it also causes AIDS-related Kaposi's sarcoma. Then the next important is we have edifovir, dipivoxil. In this edifovir dipivoxil, this has monophosphate analog of AMP. Edifovir dipivoxil is actually a monophosphate analog of AMP. Sorry, it is a monophosphate analog of AMP. It is edifovir dipivoxil. It is an esterase in the liver and it will get converted to edifovir. This edifovir will again get converted to edifovir diphosphate, which will again inhibit DNA polymerase. So the side effects of this edifovir dipivoxil is it causes headache, sore throat, and weakness will occur. With abdominal pain will be there, and flu will occur, and there will be nephrotoxicity will be there, lactic acidosis will be there. You will see hepatomegaly and steatosis is seen. So side effects like sore throat, headache, weakness, abdominal pain, flu, nephrotoxicity, especially dose limiting side effects, and we have lactic acidosis, hepatomegaly, and steatosis is seen. Use of this edifovir dipivoxil is chronic hepatitis B infection. We use this edifovir dipivoxil. Then the next important group of drugs are hepatitis C virus. These hepatitis C virus are previously preferred regimen is we used to use interferon plus ribavirin we used to use. But nowadays the new drugs have been come for hepatitis C virus, which are actually hepatitis C protease inhibitors have come. What are these hepatitis C protease inhibitors? These include simprinavir. We have all these navirs. Simprinavir, bosipravir, asunapravir. Then we have telopravir. Then we have grazopravir. Okay, these are Previrs is protease inhibitors. Previr protease inhibitors. Okay, so all these will inhibit the NS3 or 4A, NS3, 4A of serine proteases. All these will inhibit NS3 or 4A of serine proteases of hepatitis B virus. These are actually most specific drugs. And when these are actually added to interferon and ribavirin, if these are added to interferon and ribavirin, these can be administered orally as food. If these are added to interferon and ribavirin, these can be administered orally with food. Then if you see the goals of treatment of hepatitis C, in goals of treatment of hepatitis C, the main goal is we should eradicate the viral. Virus eradication is the important goal for treatment of hepatitis C. Then if you see rate of clearance without treatment, even without treatment, the rate of clearance of this drug, the rate of clearance of this without treatment is 20 to 35%. Without treatment itself, the drug, this hepatitis C virus will clear on its own without treatment in 20 to 35% of the patients. So as a result, the physicians will delay the treatment. Absence of viral detection even after 24 weeks after therapy. Causes sustainable viral response achievement. And that means efficacy end point. That means you have started him on therapy and you have waited for 24 weeks. And within these 24 weeks, there is no virus is seen in these 24 weeks. And this is called as sustainable viral response achievement. This is sustainable viral response achievement. And this is called as efficacy endpoint. The next drug group is RNA. We have RNA polymerase inhibitors. These RNA polymerase inhibitors will inhibit NS5A inhibitor. We have an NS5B inhibitors. We have this NS5A inhibitors are daclatasvir, and we have eltasvir. Daclatasvir, eltasvir, and we have ombitasvir. Daclatasvir, eltasvir, ombitasvir. Then we have ledipasvir. Ledipasvir, we have velpatasvir. We have ledipasvir, we have velpatasvir. We have okay. Daclatasvir, eltasvir, ombitasvir, ledipasvir, and velpatasvir. So NS5A inhibitors are daclatasvir, eltasvir, ombitasvir, ledipasvir, and velpatasvir. Then NS5B inhibitors are sofosbuvir, and we have dosabuvir. You have sofosbuvir and sofosbuvir. You have and dosabuvir. Sofosbuvir. You have and dosabuvir. Sofosbuvir and dosabuvir. Sofosbuvir, dosabuvir. Here 5 NS5A inhibitors are daclatasvir, eltasvir, and ombitasvir. Daclatasvir, eltasvir, ombitasvir. Daclatasvir, eltasvir, ombitasvir, and we have ledipasvir and velpatasvir. Then we have trypanosomiasis. So in the trypanosomiasis, the diseases which we have are African sleeping sickness, and we also have South American sleeping sickness. In the South American, this trypanosomiasis can cause Chagas disease. So the drug of choice for Chagas diseases, we have benzidazole. Benzidazole is the drug of choice for Chagas disease. Drug of choice for Chagas disease is benzidazole. Then we have African sleeping sickness. In African sleeping sickness, it has two parts. First, we have East African sleeping sickness. Second, we have West African sleeping sickness. First, we have East African sleeping sickness. Second, we have West African sleeping sickness. East African sleeping sickness, drug of choices, if it is early East African sleeping sickness, it causes Sudafed. And if it is late East African sleeping sickness, it causes Melasuprol. Okay. First, if it is early East African sleeping sickness, it causes Suramin. If it is late East African sleeping sickness, it causes Melasuprol. If it is early East African sleeping sickness, it causes Suramin. If it is late East African sleeping sickness, it is Melasuprol. Then we have West African sleeping sickness. In West African sleeping sickness also, if it is early, then it is pentamidine. Early, it is pentamidine. And late West African sleeping sickness is eflornithine. Late West African sleeping sickness is eflornithine. Early it is pentamidine, and late it is eflornithine. Early it is pentamidine, and we have late it is eflornithine. And in East African sickness, drug of choice, early East African sleeping sickness, we have Suramin. And late East African sleeping sickness, we have Melasuprol. Then we have causes of bacterial resistance. In bacterial resistance, we have first, it can be due to abnormal enzymatic digestion. Abnormal enzymes are enzymatic degradation. In the abnormal enzymatic degradation, the drugs include chloramphenicol, beta-lactams, and also aminoglycosides. The drugs include beta-lactams, chloramphenicol, and aminoglycosides. And we also have the drugs which will prevent the drug accumulation from inside. How will they prevent the drug accumulation from inside? That is, they produce some abnormal efflux mechanisms by which the drug can leave out. So this abnormal efflux mechanisms are produced by drugs like fluoroquinolone and also tetracycline. Drugs like fluoroquine, tetracycline, and we have erythromycin, and also anti-malarials. Drug like chloroquine, tetracycline, fluoroquinolones, Fluoroquinolones, tetracyclines, erythromycin, and antimalarials like chloroquine and quinine have abnormal efflux mechanisms. And then if there is no influx mechanisms, or if there is impermeability to the drug, if there is no influx mechanisms or impermeability to the drug, then it can produce the cell wall such that the drug is not even permeable to it. Okay, it will produce cell wall in such a way that the drug is not permeable to it. So this is no influx or impermeable to the drug. Then we have abnormal target protein. So if you see in abnormal target protein or decreased affinity of the target, abnormal target protein or decreased affinity of the target, this includes number 1, we have fluoroquinolones. The DNA gyrase abnormality can occur if it is a macrolide, or if it is a clindamycin, then ribosomal point mutation can occur. So as a result, these cannot bind to the subunits of the ribosome, and if there is MRSA, this MRSA will cause abnormal penicillin binding protein mutation will occur. And if it is rifampicin, now this rifampicin will cause point mutation, especially this point mutation occurs in RNA polymerase. This point mutation occurs in RNA polymerase with rifampicin. Then we have principle of antibiotic dosing. Antibiotic dosing include, in the antibiotic dosing, 1, we have minimum inhibitory concentration, then we have minimum bacterial concentration. In minimum inhibitory concentration, it is the lowest achievable concentration to achieve a visible zone of inhibition after 24 hours. So that means in order to inoculate 10 to the power of 4 to 10 to the power of 5 colony forming units per ml, how much amount of, in order to inhibit the inoculation of 10 to the power of 4 to 10 to the power of 5 colony forming units per ml, how much amount of antibiotic concentration is required? That is minimum inhibitory concentration. Then we have minimum bacterial concentration. This is the lowest antibiotic concentration that can kill almost 99% of organisms, microorganisms which are present. So this is minimum bacterial concentration. Then the killing which we are killing, this is of 2 types. 1, we have concentration dependent killing. Second, we have time dependent killing. In concentration dependent killing is directly proportional to the concentration. The examples are, we have fluoroquinolones, aminoglycosides, then metronidazole and daptomycin. Fluoroquinolones, aminoglycosides, metronidazole and daptomycin. These include fluoroquinolones, aminoglycosides, metronidazole and daptomycin. Then we have time dependent killing. That means as the time increases, at a certain point it will be maximum, and after that it will plateau off. So this is time dependent killing. As the concentration increases, killing increases, but after certain time and concentration, the killing remains constant. So if you stop giving doses at any of these points, the concentration will fall again. Okay, so the drugs of time dependent killing are beta-lactams and also vancomycin. Beta-lactams and vancomycins are time dependent killing. Then we have post-antibiotic effect. Post-antibiotic effect is even after stopping the drug, if the antibiotic effect still persists. If the antibiotic even still acts by inhibiting the organism even after stopping the drug, then it is called as post-antibiotic effect. It is mainly present for protein. It is mainly present for protein synthesis inhibitors, and also it is present for DNA polymerase inhibitors. It is present for protein synthesis and DNA polymerase inhibitors. These both will have low post-antibiotic effect. They have low post-antibiotic effect. Then the next important drug is, we have CDK. That is concentration dependent killing with prolonged antibiotic effect. What are the drugs which shows concentration dependent killing with prolonged post antibiotic effect? So these include higher doses with wider interval chosen with better compliance, like we have fluoroquinolone, aminoglycosides then we have metronidazole, then we have rifampicin. Fluoroquinolones, aminoglycosides, metronidazole, rifampicin. Fluoroquinolones, aminoglycosides, metronidazole, rifampicin are the concentration dependent killing with prolonged post antibiotic effect. Then we have time dependent killing. Time dependent killing has 2 types. 1, it can have short post antibiotic effect, or it can have prolonged post antibiotic effect. If it has short post antibiotic effect, that means they maintain the serum concentration above the minimum inhibitory concentration only for a shorter time. So as a result, once the serum concentration decreases, their effect also falls. So as a result, again you should give one more dose here. You should give one more dose here. Like this, you should increase the doses. Frequent dosing should be given. So these include 1, beta-lactams. Then we have clindamycin. These include beta-lactams, clindamycin. Then these also includes macrolides. This includes beta-lactams, clindamycin, and macrolides. Then if you see those with prolonged post-antibiotic effect, that is time-dependent killing with prolonged post-antibiotic effect. So as a result, these have prolonged post-antibiotic effect. So as a result, these can be given only after the less frequent dosing can be given. That is, with dosing can be given with wider interval. Examples of them are, we have azithromycin, then we have clarithromycin, then we have tetracyclines are given. These tetracyclines are long-acting tetracyclines which include doxycyclines are seen. So, shorter post-antibiotic effect is seen in beta-lactams, clindamycins, and macrolides, like except azithromycin and clarithromycin, and prolonged post-antibiotic effect is seen in azithromycin, clarithromycin, and tetracyclines, which are long-acting, followed by doxycycline. Thank you, and thank you for watching.